Hey, here's another video from weldingtipsandtricks.com. Today's video is about doing some TIG welding on outside corner joints and lap joints. Last week's video I built this little portable portaband stand, and so I'm putting some end caps on the tubing. That's an outside corner joint. I'm also going to put some little feet on it to keep it from wobbling. That'll be the lap joints. So testing out the little stand here, I'm going to go ahead and cut out these little end caps and feet. And it seems to work out pretty good. Got to clean up all the hot rolled mill scale off every area where I'm going to TIG weld. And I'm going to weld these little end caps on first. And I marked them to where they're a little bit bigger than the inside diameter, but smaller than the outside diameter to give me a little bit of room to get the weld. They just go in nicer like this. Now, I've been very guilty of tacking stuff like this, just holding up there with glove on and whatever. And this, I even had a glove on a few months ago, tacking something like this, and shot right through the glove, burnt my finger, very deep burn, very painful, not smart. Daddy said if you're going to be dumb, you got to have to be tough, and he was right. So, smarter way is using this mag tab from Strong Hand Tools. Very handy little innovative little tool for holding all kinds of little small parts. And, you know, this is a Strong Hand Build Pro table that you see in the background there, and this is also made by Strong Hand. I'm a very big fan of Strong Hand tools for all their little welding clamps and tools that they make. But this is great for holding anything practically: washers, tabs, bolts. You know, you're all the time having to weld some little small thing that's very hard to hold, and it's very tempting just to hold it with one hand and tack it with the other. Well, it's just a lot smarter. The mag tab is like a third hand. And you might remember a few months ago I built a little sheet metal tote tray here, and the mag tab even came in handy for fabricating a little small sheet metal part like this, just getting things held while I got a few tacks on it. So I found it to be extremely handy, and I'm going to use it a lot today. For welding these little end caps in, I just took the little attachment off, and then at the core of the mag tab is basically it's a little magnetic V-pad. You can buy these things just separate, just by themselves in different shapes and sizes, but you can see how it holds the little end cap on there fine. And you also see how the V-pad can be used for a little cradle for spinning round parts. You can make a little makeshift station for like a turntable. This is 1/4-inch wall tubing, pretty heavy, but the magnets in a couple of these are strong enough to hold it in place and keep it from falling out while I spin it and weld it. Here's a little small one, and again, they come in different shapes and sizes, but they're just a really handy little tool for little sheet metal jobs like this, for getting them held while you're tacking, especially at weird angles. So I'm using a little speed tacking technique here, and what that amounts to is basically, I've gone over this before. I'll just do a little quickie here, but basically you set the machine for roughly twice what it would take to weld it, but then you only tack it for like a microsecond. Like you hit the either, I'm using a torch switch here, and it's just like not even half a second. I just press it on and let it off as quick as I can, and it's a short, quick blast of amperage. And for tacking 11 gauge and thinner parts like this, it's just really handy for getting some really small, clean tacks on something. So this is what I like an outside corner joint to look like. I want it to be kind of like inside corner to inside corner mated, and then if I want to use filler, it gives me a place to lay the filler, and if I don't want to use filler, I can just wash the corners of the metal in for weld metal. Works really well. Here's how that works. Watch the edges of the bead. They go out just wide enough to melt a little bit of the corner of the metal in there and draw it into to be used as filler metal. Now, if this was something structural, that might not be strong enough. This is an end cap, so basically anything would be fine. Here's another example of something I did a few months ago. A stainless steel tubing inside a stainless bracket, and it's the same situation. I just used those little small series of circles to wash the corner of the tubing in for weld metal. This was a handle on a cart, was plenty strong enough. Here's another example. I'm going to use small circles on this, and watch the edge of the weld, and it goes out just wide enough to wash the corners in to be used as weld metal. weld metal's got to come from somewhere. If you do a little, evenly spaced circles, a series of circles, it'll come out pretty uniform. All right, now onto the little feet. I'm putting feet on this thing just so it won't wobble, so I can set it on any flat surface and it won't wobble around on this portaband stand. Well, using the same magnetic V-pad portion of the mag tab is a no-brainer for this too. Perfect application for this. Holds it in place while I do my little tacks. And then on the edges, I don't even need filler metal. I can just zip along. I put filler metal on some I didn't, not because it even needed it, but just because it gives me a little more to talk about and more demonstrations to make for the sake of the video. Now, a common mistake on lap joints is not enough metal, too much arc length, and that bead will turn into a boomerang-shaped, little C-shaped, and you won't really be penetrating down into the corner. You'll be joining everything, but it's just not really the best technique. For this, I mean, it's perfectly acceptable for the feet on this thing, but a better technique to use for a lap joint on 11 gauge and thinner is to try to keep the beads small and then wash the filler metal right down into the corner and then maybe back up a little bit and add rod. That's the way to use minimal amperage. Just use the technique and arc length to wash the metal into the corner and then back up and add filler. You don't have to do forward and back. You can get the heat just right and go at a steady pace, but this is just one technique that I've found works, especially when you're doing like a T-joint on something thin and trying not to penetrate through. You can use a lower amperage like that. But you can just move along steady like this right here. But you need to watch the top edge and just barely use enough heat and add enough rod to wash that top edge and keep a straight line and just barely nip that corner so that it keeps a straight line and makes the bead look a lot nicer instead of all chopped and scalloped. It's like coloring and staying between the lines when you color. It just makes for a neater job. All right, let's go over a little summary here on today's video. All right, a little tip for you. Dial calipers come in really handy for small measurements, but what they're really handy for is once you get that measurement, sometimes you can get a quick, without having to get out a separate straight edge and everything, you can get a quick scribe line on something like this and then make a quick cut. And use a mag tab from Strong Hand Tools instead of your poor old fingers, and it's just safer and it's actually quicker. It's not often you can use something that's safer and quicker. This is the cat's meow for holding these little end caps on here like this. And for getting small, quick tack welds, set the machine for roughly twice what you'd weld at, and just give it a quick blast with you got to have a real tight arc to do it. And a little word of caution, you definitely want to practice this on some scrap metal. And when there's no place to prop, guess what? A TIG finger you can prop right next to the weld, right next to where you're welding, and your finger won't even get warm hardly. Now for lap joints, most of the time you want to keep your you want to keep your eye on the top edge of that metal. That's kind of like one of the key things you're looking for. Just nip the corner. Don't melt a bunch of that corner into the weld, and don't not go all the way up to the corner either, and that'll give you a better looking end product. Not perfect again, but just decent. And for outside corners where there's no filler rod used, a series of quick little small circles works for me anyway. Again, it just washes the corner in for filler metal, gives you some uniformity, gives you kind of an increment way to travel. And there you go. Well, that's today's video for you. I hope you got something out of it. For more welding tips for TIG, MIG, stick, and whatnot, visit weldingtipsandtricks.com.